Hello and welcome everybody to another episode of Strickland. I'm your host, Shwin and Stacy. This is episode 533. I am joined, as always, by my co-host Stacy. That is at StacyPound89 on Twitter. Stacy, how you doing?
Doing pretty well. Nice October day in Seattle.
It's a not so nice October day in New York, but nobody cares about that. People care about basketball, and we're going to talk about basketball. Before we do that, I do have to make a few announcements. First, Strickland has a YouTube channel where you may watch this podcast. If you are not done so already, please hit like, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment. That'd be a huge help to us. The Strickland also has merchandise, which you can find on our website at www.strick.land. There's a link that'll take you to a merchandise store, and there's all kinds of cool stuff on there, like t-shirts, sweatshirts, hats, coffee mugs, water bottles, you name it, we got it. Strickland also has a Patreon, which you can subscribe to. There are a number of different tiers. There's $6 tiers you get access to Pod Strickland, this podcast that I host every Friday the Prez. You also get access to Takes from Obvious Bozos, a podcast hosted by Andrew Steele, a.k.a. Doug, along with Zach Blatter, and you get access to the Strickland Discord where the conversation never stops. The further tiers is a $9 tier to get you access to Strickland Roll, the pod that I host with YC, rant and rave about the Knicks and more. You also get access to one of our premium articles, and you get access to Strickland NFL, which you guessed it is a podcast about the NFL that is hosted by Konstantin Mechkos and Desmond Novak. The further tiers is $15 tier, $30 tier, $15 tier, and a $100 tier. Those come with a variety of additional benefits, like listening on our categories, merchandise discounts, and even potentially co-hosting a podcast alongside yours truly one day, whether you choose to subscribe or not. None of this would be possible without you. And none of this would be possible without our sponsor, FanDuel. Thank you to FanDuel, which we'll be using throughout this podcast as we go through the Eastern Conference over-unders. Your best place for betting action, if you want to place, futures bets, game bets, live in-game parlays, all of that is at your fingertips on FanDuel, so check it out. Okay, let's get into it. Before we get into the over-unders, just briefly touch on some Knicks things. They played a preseason game against the Wizards since the last time we talked, which was fucking horrible. They didn't play like anybody in that game. No starters played. Josh Hart was out. I think somebody else was out that it's just not in my brain. Oh, Shamet. Shamet didn't play that game. So seven guys.
Shamet had to go that way.
Okay.
Sorry.
Not your best effort. But that's 7 of your top 9 guys, presumably in your rotation. Maybe even 7 of your top 9. So I didn't really take much from that game. It was not good. They got thoroughly outplayed throughout. I guess the one thing that I think is worth touching on before we kind of move on into the various over-unders, or I guess a few things. I haven't taken much from it, but I do think it's worth noting Brogdon has not played that well. Personally, I feel like he's not trying very hard, and I think that is maybe because he already knows he's going to make the team. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he is just washed, and this is just what he looks like. And, in that scenario, obviously, I hope that the Knicks don't roster him. But I don't think he's washed. It does look like to me that he's not competing at the highest level that he possibly could. So maybe I'm a little less worried about what he might look like down the line. I got to say Jordan Clarkson worries me because I don't think his issues are for lack of trying. He just doesn't look like he has the burst. He can't really ever turn the corner so far from what I've seen. His jump shot making has obviously been, let's say, up and down to be generous. The decision making is always a little wild with him. But yeah, definitely a little bit concerned about how he looks. I'm not going to lie about that. And, I thought there were some good things from Dadier in this game as far as, I think he is getting the message loud and clear from Mike Brown of like he needs to use his frame and be more aggressive in general. There's still a lot of room for growth from him, but I thought it was encouraging to see him kind of actually get in the mix for some contested rebounds. There was one specifically that he ripped away from, might have been from Bagley, that I thought was pretty impressive in traffic. But just 2 of 7 from the field. He hit his first 2 threes and then basically didn't do anything after that for offensively. But you still need to see a lot more from him. And then you have Tyler Kolek, who probably had his best, not probably, he did have his best game of preseason. He had 20 points and whatever it was, 5 assists or something like that in 22 minutes, I believe. He had a really nice game. I thought it was nice to see him actually look to score when he put the ball on the deck. Do I feel confident that that's a thing that is going to translate over into, actual regular season basketball and or anything beyond that even? No, I don't feel confident about that. And I still, like, if I'm going to have to bet on like how it all unfolds, like my bet is that Tyler Kolek gets traded and they roster Brogdon and Garrison Matthews goes on his way somewhere else, and that's that. I I I really struggle with the idea that they're going to bail on Dadier. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe all the smoke is real, but we'll see what happens when the smoke settles. But I don't know. Did you have any other takeaways, or did you have any takeaways from preseason, or did you feel like, I don't know. Were you concerned by anything you've seen from Brogdon or Clarkson or anything like that so far?
Not more than I'd already have seen. Clarkson, we know who he is. It's going to feel like campaign, but with more polish, right? He's not as much of a physically campaign 6'4", but he's a skinny guy. Isn't going to impose his will, right? He uses his jitteriness to get those floaters, or he takes a three. There's more to Clarkson's game, but it's still that gunner. That's his role, and it's going to look ugly at times. I'm kind of okay with that. With Brogdon, the thing is, what you would ideally want is a guy who gives you some size next to Deuce, right? Or Brunson, who can defend at the point of attack, not like he once could, but enough, and you know, and run the offense in a way that allows Deuce to do what he does best, right, and move off ball. It's concerning. I guess I'll pose this to you. Do you think it's more just Brogdon's missing and making bad reads because he's in a new offense, or do you draw the problems back to physical decline? Because the latter is much more concerning. He'll pick up the offense. He's a vet. He'll make shots. We've seen.
I just don't. I don't think he's trying. Like that's quite honestly what I think. I just don't think he's trying very hard. And I thought there were 3 plays where he did actually try in this game offensively. And on one, he got to the rim, layup. That was like against the clock had bled down. There was like 4 seconds left, and he recovered a loose ball. It was after he had kind of nearly thrown the ball away. And he got to the rim and finished with his left hand. And then there were a couple at the end of the half where there was one actually where he completely bumped the defender off the spot and he just missed the bunny. But then next time down, he just got a layup. And I don't know, like I think there's a lot of managing himself, like, and we know this with veterans. And this is why I try not to get too carried away with what I see in preseason, because there are a group of players in preseason who are fighting for roster spots, fighting for contracts, fighting to stay in the NBA, or fighting very, very in a very real way to establish themselves earlier in their careers. Establish themselves in a rotation, earn a higher level of playing time. Like those guys are maxing out in a way where I think there are veterans, like a guy like Brogdon, very specifically, who, if let's say he has assurances of, okay, I'm going to be on the roster. Well, one thing to consider is he's not under contract right now, not into the regular season. So it behooves him to stay healthy more than anything else. If he knows he's going to be on the roster, if he stays healthy, then guess what? His primary focus is going to be on staying healthy and locking in a veteran's minimum for the year versus, trying hard in a preseason game that ultimately doesn't matter at all and risking any potential for injury. And like, let's be real, Malcolm Brogdon is a player more than many others who definitely should be cognizant of the risk of injury. So I don't know. Like all I can say is that I did not feel like I was watching a guy who was physically cooked the last couple of years, whatever other issues he had going on. And like, if maybe I'm off and father time has come for him, but it would be a little bit more surprising. Clarkson, again, just different to me. Like I think his issues are different from Brogdon's. I don't feel like I'm watching a player who's maybe coasting through it and not taking things seriously and not trying to make stuff happen. Like I do think I'm watching Brogdon kind of like, okay, yeah, here's the ball. Kolek, go do something. I'm gonna go. Like he just, I don't think he's competing that hard. And again, like you mentioned, I'm not worried about him picking up the offense or anything like that. Like whatever his issues may be, he's notorious for being maybe not the easiest person to deal with inside the locker room and stuff like that. Like I don't think anybody has ever felt that Malcolm Brogdon struggled to understand, what reads and in whatever systems he's played or he's required to make. So yeah, I don't know. I will believe he's washed when I see it in the regular season. I just can't take the preseason stuff too seriously with him just because I do think that there's an element of he's more or less made the roster and he's just hanging out. So we'll see what happens.
Well, I hope they've done the due diligence on physical and all that and conditioning. And I will say, I don't think it's mutually exclusive to say he's not trying versus there's physical decline. I was thinking about this with AJ Brown before, right? So there's a clip from either against the Giants or the Broncos that both were disasters, but he gave up. It was the Broncos. He gave up on this route where he beat the safety and Hurts put it in the spot where if he didn't stop running, he would have caught it. And
that was a funny play.
Not so much for me, but thanks. But I also think that, yeah, there's been effort issues from AJ. There's the passive aggressive tweets. I also think he's not 100%. And you do tend to, that's where subconsciously or consciously you start to ration your effort more. So I don't think that's mutually exclusive, like the effort thing from that could be signs of real physical decline. Of course, you might say, well, we know Brogdon has physically declined. He's not playing more than 10 to 15 minutes in any game. He's a deep roster option. He's probably going to get a lot of rest days, and that's why we have so many guards. And I think that's fair to say. But that's what that's really my main. I'm not worried about if the guy's going to be able to shoot. I'm not worried about the guy not knowing his defensive assignment. I'm not worried about him getting bullied, although I don't really want him guarding De'Aaron Fox in ISO as often. But that would be what I would be looking at.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fair. I don't. I can't say that I am all that concerned about. Again, I'm being honest about this. Like, I just don't feel like, to your point, he is definitely. I mean, he's very obviously not the same athlete that he has been previously in his career. And he's never been like obviously a high flyer, but it just even in terms of like speed, right? I don't think he quite has the same burst to get to the rim consistently the way he did maybe a few years ago. But I do think that like you talked about AJ Brown, one thing guys like that, right? It's kind of an interesting comparison. Not obviously not that Brogdon has ever reached the levels AJ Brown has, but like these are powerful players. And I think when you have that type of power, you can offset some loss of burst and speed and still remain effective. And that's why I just have some more faith in Brogdon over a guy like Clarkson, who like, look, if the burst isn't there, if the speed isn't there, if the kind of shiftiness on the ball isn't there, can he really be the type of shot maker that he's been at higher, better points in his career? I don't think so. Whereas with Brogdon, I think there are, yes, he's not going to get to the rim and finish with the same frequency or efficiency maybe. And maybe he can't drive quite as much in higher minutes. But can this guy in, 15 to 18 minutes a night still be productive and maybe come close to, what his career averages are in terms of like on a per possession basis when you're not riding him major minutes? Like, yeah, I think there's a definite possibility for that. And, personally, I feel like this is again very weird to say this, but like he's kind of like a to me is like a high upside bet they've made for this season, because if the guy can be, close to his kind of what his rate numbers are over the course of his career. So it was like per possession, production over the course of his career. If he's anything close to that, and even if he can only do that again for like 15 to 18, 20 minutes a night, that's huge. I think that's really, really, that's a big get for them. So I imagine he makes the team. I get why people are concerned, and I don't think that's wrong. I think it's more than fair, actually. Um, this is where like you not hope, the team does have more information than we do, right? They probably have a better idea of what's going on. They see him in practice as well. They also probably know what their plans are for him, right? Like, did they effectively promise him a rotation spot, or is he actually trying out? And if he's actually trying out, and this is what he's producing, obviously, like, he shouldn't make the team. Even if I haven't been that impressed with Tyler Kolek or anything like that, but if this is ultimately what Malcolm Brogdon is right now, like, there's really no reason to trade a guy like Kolek or even Dottie or like either of those guys, right? To open up a roster spot for him. You should just waive him, sign Garrison Matthews if you want, and be done with it. But we'll see what they do.
I think that's fair. I'm also of the opinion they won't trade Dadier, but if they've promised Brogdon a roster spot, they really want Shamet, which I think they should. Shamet probably still is more equipped this year to contribute than Dadier. And if Matthews gives you like a completely different dimension, which we did miss last year in terms of a really high volume bucket and let it fly shooter from all kinds of angles, they're trying to win a ring this year. This is probably the best. This is the best opportunity they've had to win a ring since what, 97? Would you say?
Yeah.
There's only one team you would say, okay, where a noted talent disadvantage, and that's OKC. Denver would
not Brooklyn.
Yeah, I mean, Cam Thomas is scary. I mean, they're going to get Giannis, so that will change things, and they might take back the city again, just like they did when Durant and Kyrie joined, and Harden.
And when Jay-Z became a part owner.
Yeah, and Mikhail Prokhorov put a billboard up outside MSG. I mean, it's happening. Ron Paul meme. No, I think that if you believe that trading Dadier gives you the best chance to win this year, that's not nothing. I think if they said like he's very close, that changes it. And like you said, they watched him in practice. I think he's like, I do think that when I watch him play, I think the guy, to the extent he needs to change things, it's not there's nothing like, it's not fundamental flaws in his game. I don't think this is Kevin Knox, but they watch him in practice and they have to make that judgment call. I believe they will probably, I think Kolek is, like, to your point, definitely gone, even if they have to dump him. I do think, like, if they really want Matthews, right, and they have all these guards, we haven't been inspired by Clarkson or Brogdon. I'm not saying they would trade Deuce to create a spot, but if someone gives them a not even Godfather offer, but a really good offer for Deuce, I do think they would listen to that. It's just tough to make that work because you don't really want too many. Like, no one's going to offer two unprotected first. Getting one back doesn't really change the Giannis equation or something. And Milwaukee themselves would probably say, we'd rather Deuce than like an unprotected pick that's likely to be in the 20s. So you're in a tough spot, but I do think they like Matthews a lot, and it'll be very interesting to see what happens. Yeah, but I don't think they're out on Dadier, but if they don't think he's going to contribute this year, if they think next year is the first year of rotation play, that makes sense. I do think, like, even if you don't think he's going to create in games, seeing him play with a little bit more aggressiveness and create, yeah, it's not going to happen in games, but we saw that with, I know one of your favorite players, Quentin Grimes, in Summer League, and they put the ball in his hands, and he played really well in Summer League as the main creator. especially when I think that year was the last year Quickly played. No, Quickly didn't play that year. So I think they had Deuce, but they had Grimes running the offense more. And he looked great. And even though he never ended up doing that, he still doesn't really do that in Philadelphia. It shows the confidence and like just the level of comfort that you have, that even if that's not going to be your job to drive to the hole, you know what that person is looking at and what that is, right? And you know that I can do this if I need to. So you let the three fly with more confidence. You attack the closeout with more confidence. You do the minimalist version of those things better, which I'm starting to see from Dadier. Again, I'll say it again. I don't think it's Kevin Knox. I think he'll have a career. How good is
he rebounds and he like tries on defense, so that's a good start.
Yeah, and he has decent lateral mobility too. I think that was more than effort. The biggest issue I had with Knox is that he just couldn't move laterally. So there's a lot to like. The question is, when is that payoff going to come? The trade-off now is if he goes somewhere and he becomes a viable rotation wing, we are looking at, the next, at some point we're going to have to bridge to the next era, right? Brunson aging, new younger guys, OG aging, Bridges aging, right? And if you lose a 6'9" guy who's at least a viable rotation wing, maybe becomes much more, that's the cost. But I do think they believe this is the year, and it is the year. And if they don't win it this year, that's going to be tough. So if you feel like Garrison Matthews gives you that, and you can get a decent return for Dadier, that's there's a lot that goes into it. So
yeah, I'm with you. Okay, let's get into this. Let's start here. We're going in alphabetical order. Sorry, you're gonna have to wait for the Knicks, guys. We're starting with the Atlanta Hawks. The over-under is 47.5, and the juice on it, the over is at -104. So again, all this is on FanDuel. So go to FanDuel. All this on FanDuel. So FanDuel has 47.5 for the Hawks. The over is juiced at -104, meaning again, if you put down $104 and you win the bet, you get $100 back. Obviously, if you lose, unfortunately, you lose $104. And then the under is -118. I will start. I have the over on this. I don't feel great because I do think that this over is highly dependent on the availability of Kristaps Porzingis. I think he is their biggest swing piece. If he is healthy, they have the ability to play a lot of different types of lineups. They can play double big with him and Okongwu, which I don't think they can do. I don't think they cannot do that with any other combination of bigs they have on the roster. Him and Okongwu, obviously, that would be a lot of rim protection on the floor, pretty good mobility, and it gives you kind of that rim runner element while you will still get the pop element from Porzingis. So I think that's like a really interesting lineup for them. And then obviously he's probably going to be the starting center if he's healthy. And we have seen the advantages that Kristaps Porzingis as a starting center who can spread the floor from the 5 and protect the rim, what he can provide, right? We saw that in Boston. The problem is he healthy? And even if he is deemed ready to play on the floor, how does he last through a full season? Apparently, he feels much better than he did last year when he had some weird-ass mystery illness. But, look, I did not watch a second of Eurobasket, but apparently he looked good in Eurobasket. So I'm going to go with what people said, that he looks good in Eurobasket and that he is, back to at least full health or as full of health as he could be. And then, I like the additions they made aside from Porzingis, right? I like Nickeil Alexander-Walker. I think that was, does he completely solve their, when Trey sits, how do we run the offense issue? No, but I do think just having more guys who are capable of creating something on the ball, even if none of them are particularly great at being an engine, the fact that you can play multiple guys together in absence of Trey Young, I think that is a good thing. It's a good thing. I like the addition of Kennard, probably not as much as some people who went like crazy over that were, but I do think Kennard's a good get for them. Just in terms of obviously adding one more shooter. They're getting Jalen Johnson back. If you're bullish on Zachary Rizache, it's his second year, right? Maybe he can take another step forward. I'm a pretty big Dyson Daniels fan. Like, I think that there is the potential for him to get to. I don't think he's ever going to be a superstar offensively or anything like that, but I do think that he can get to reach another level. Just in terms of like he gets to that floater range so easily. It's really should not be that hard for him to improve in terms of drawing fouls and just getting to the rim and finishing at the rim a little bit more than he has, and I think that's very much on the cards for him. Shooting obviously is an issue, but yeah, I don't know. I think this team has a lot of interesting pieces. So yeah, I'm pretty interested in this team. I think they're good. And I will go over on this, even though I don't feel particularly strong about it.
How much do you think Porzingis matters for them, like his health?
I mean, I think it's the biggest swing factor, like I said.
Yeah, so that's why I would lean to the under. I also think the East is going to suck. Atlanta might be the third best team in the East.
That's kind of the hardest thing about talking about all these Eastern Conference teams is because you're like, well, the East sucks. So
yeah. I am going to take the under, even though there's another swing factor. I would say, does Jalen Johnson truly blow up? He's looked really good in preseason. He's improved every year. Has a very difficult. Let me ask you this: in 3 years, who do you think will be the better player, Jalen Johnson or Paolo Banchero?
Hitler versus Stalin. Tough question.
You don't like Jalen Johnson?
No, he's on the Hawks. He's on the Hawks, man. Fuck him.
But he's good.
Yeah. So I mean, fucking Patrick Mahomes is good, and he might as well fucking be Satan to me. I would still say I would say Paolo. I would say Paolo.
50 times with no blitzes. You would say Banchero? Okay. I think the fact that it's a conversation and Banchero is viewed widely as one of the top rising young stars, which I do think he's a little overrated. But I'm also not. I also think there's a strong. Jalen has great burst, size, probably underrated decision and playmaking ability, and he can defend, unlike Paolo. If he blows up this year, that is on the one hand like the tail outcome that makes this under look ridiculous. Maybe they even get the 2 seed or they threaten the Knicks and Cavs. On the other side, there's also the possibility that Porzingis misses significant time, or when he plays is just, we saw in that Knicks Celtics series, he did not look like remotely a threat. I'm going to take the under because I think that's more likely. But I get the other argument. Does Dyson have a leap? Right, they have multiple guys in that boat who can do something like that. We'll see. And then the other thing that gives me a little bit of pause is this is probably more for the playoffs, but I'm not the biggest Trae Young believer. I think you're basically looking at 6 foot Harden. Is that a fair comp? You think Trae Young is like 6 foot Harden?
No, Harden is like on another fucking planet to Trae.
No, but he's not 6 feet, right? So what I'm saying is ball dominant, doesn't play off ball. Trae has the mid range game, but Harden had size, and just like all they do is spread pick and roll, and it works great in the regular season, but against good teams it struggles. That's kind of
I mean, stylistically, sure.
I'm not saying Trae's as good as Harden.
And I despise James Harden, but I would.
That was not what I was going for, because it's like saying if I said someone was 5'11" Randy Moss, I think the implication would be they're not as good as Randy Moss, right? So that's kind of where I was going with that. But yeah. I'll take the under.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the under is, again, it has slightly more juice on it, so you definitely are going where the action is at. But yeah, it's like, oh, Malcolm Brogdon has decided to retire, so we're good.
Really? So him and Zadarius Smith in the same week for me. That's wild. All right, what is it? Ale Le Bleu, right? Is that how you say it? Ale Le Bleu.
Ale Bleu. So this is, I mean, this basically they just have to dump Kolek and sign Matthews and we're good to go.
So maybe he wasn't just not trying. He was quiet quitting, Shwin.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, maybe he came in and was just like, can we, whoever, producer Paul, make sure you go ahead and delete the first 25 minutes of this podcast. It'd be great. Yeah, whatever.
So you would think that then Kolek gets traded if they're willing to trade Dadier to sign Matthews. You have to think Kolek still gets traded, and then they just keep Matthews, right?
But then it's like, I don't know. That seems that now I feel like you need to keep Kolek, like
Because you don't have another ball handler.
Yeah, you can't just have fucking Clarkson there.
Well, I mean, have you been impressed? I do think Deuce Ace from
he can't run point. He can't run point. He'll never
he's
be able
been
to
better
run
at kind of controlling.
He can't see the floor. He can't see the floor once he starts dribbling. No shot. I like Deuce. I like Deuce in his role. Not a point guard. Will never be a point guard. Can't see the floor well enough. That's it. Like I don't see that at all.
Well, so I did want to. Sorry, I know we got the over-unders. Like, how do you think they'd handle even if it was Brogdon, right? Or even if they had a more quote-unquote seasoned guard, they're going to have someone babysit the bench, right? So I was talking with Captain Pearl on Twitter, and he was saying, well, Bridges can't really create that well. So I was like, all right, but we have a coach that used a big at the top of the key to run his offense. I'm not saying Cat is Sabonis, but can we do that? Now, that becomes complicated if you start Mitch, because Mitch is going to have to play like 12 minutes if Cat is the first sub out. That's more reason to start Deuce. But I'm curious how they'll handle that, because even if they sign a marginally better point guard, like the Kings did, shout out the Kings for a roster that makes 100% sense. How do you think they'll handle those bench? Like, it's not going to be Deuce or Clarkson creating, really, right? Like, it'll probably, I think it should be Cat, and I think that's good reason to start Deuce, because I don't trust Bridges completely to do that. So,
yeah. Well, look, we'll get to the Knicks when we get to the Knicks.
Right.
We'll talk about Brogdon retiring and how smart I sound in the first 20 minutes of this pod. Both of us actually, in the first 20 minutes of this pod. That it'll be fantastic. Okay. I really look, producer Paul, don't actually delete it, but if you wanted to, I wouldn't stop you. Okay. I'm gonna go to Boston now. I gotta say I think a lot of these East numbers are very hard to pick. Boston's 42.5. I would hammer the under on this, except Jason Tatum is dunking. So I'm like, what the fuck am I doing here? I don't know, man. If Jason Tatum's dunking already, it seems like he'll be back at some point this year. And look, I know the front court they have is terrible. It's honestly, if you look at it, it might be the worst front court in the league prior to Jason Tatum being healthy. And even when he comes back, obviously the 4 and 5 spots are still going to be pretty messy. But like, I don't know, man. Tatum is pretty good. And if he comes back around with like 30, 35 games left, right, in February, is it inconceivable that they would be, let's say they're like 23 and 27 through the, like when he gets back, right? So you have 32 games left. Do you think it's crazy that they go 19 and 11 or 19 and 13? I don't. I feel like that's very possible, and they would be in the weird in between spot, right? Of like, okay, well, if he's coming back, then you might as well try to make the playoffs, right? Because he's back. Like, well, what is the point of tanking it? Then he's not going to be. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I just feel like if they're hovering around 500 in February and he comes back, this feels like a pretty good bet for the over. And the over, by the way, it's minus 102. The under is minus 20. So again, the under is getting more action here. I don't like I don't like the Tatum coming back piece. That worries me a little bit. Um, so I am going to go over here. I actually had this as an under when I was doing it beforehand, but I'm going to switch to an over. I don't feel I would not take this. This is not one I would take. Like this is probably one of my lowest confidence ones. But the Tatum thing is just it's weird, and it's again it's the regular season, so like really I think this bet is like, do you think that Jaylen Brown, Peyton Pritchard, Anthony Simons, Derek White, and whatever the hell else they got in the front court going on there, can that squad hover around 500? And I feel like they can. I could be totally wrong on this. I'm open. Like I think it's very possible. I'm completely wrong about that, and I'm kind of giving them too much credit simply for like Boston Celtics competence. And like obviously they've lost a lot, right? Drew's gone, Porzingis is gone, Horford's gone. We already talked about Tatum. It's a lot, but I don't know. Like it's just hard for me to totally buy in. So the Tatum thing is just the weirdest part of this. I am taking the Celtics to go over, but don't feel great about it.
They own their pick this year, right?
They do own their pick this year.
Yeah, so it just makes no sense to bring Tatum. Even if Tatum came back, is this a team that could challenge Cleveland or us, do you think?
No.
Yeah, they're not winning a title, right? So then you have to ask, what's the point of bringing Jason Tatum back? He clearly wants to show that he is making strides and all of that. That's great. I think image is something that Jason Tatum has been very good at crafting, right? Or I'm not going to say very good, but it's certainly something we've seen him be very conscious of, right? I got you with me tonight, right? So it is in Jason Tatum's interest to convey that I'm going to try to come back. It is in the Celtics' interest to convey that he's going to try to come back and that he's healthy enough to do so. The reality is, I think that if you look at this roster, you say we have an opportunity to retool, right? Are they in the second apron or no?
Boston is not. No, they're under the first apron. They're probably going to try and duck the tax. This is the other part of it that's weird too. It's like because they're probably going to try and duck the tax. How do you duck the tax? They can either dump Hauser or they can make a kind of trade Simons for a lesser money contract move.
Yeah.
So it's just again like I
think that there's. So you're good.
No, I know you finish your point.
I think there's a strong potential they blow it up and tank. I don't know as much about this year's draft, but I think that if you have an excuse to move off Jaylen Brown, right, which they can tell themselves, oh, we would have beat the Knicks if not for the Tatum injury. You're about to go down 3-1. That your team there had a ceiling. Oklahoma City is not going anywhere. If you don't respect the Knicks, Cleveland is still quite good. Indiana will be back next year. So if there was a excuse to move off Jaylen Brown, I think this would be an opportune time. I don't know exactly who you target, right? Do you target a package of young players? I don't think Milwaukee would be interested in him, but who knows, right? If you can move off a guy like Jaylen Brown, and if you look at Peyton Pritchard and say, he's 27, but he's a competent guard who's not a liability on defense, you might look at moving Derek White too, whose value is probably not going to get much higher than this, and he's 31. But if I'm San Antonio with an excess of picks, and if, as both of us, I think, imagine De'Aaron Fox and Dylan Harper doesn't end up looking like the front court of the future, I might go get Derek White and, move Fox to somewhere else, right? Or, Derek White can shoot. He's shown enough creation ability where you think that can work next to Wemby. That's just one team. My point is, it seems like it would make a lot more sense to retool and prepare for Jason Tatum round 2 as soon as next year beginning, then try to salvage a few more wins and like an Eastern Conference semifinal berth. So I'm going to take the under because I just think they're at one point, like, this is a smart management that has operated this way. They're just going to say, Jason, keep progressing. Great to see. We're good. We got.
Yeah, I mean,
we're going to just ride this out.
I mean, I think that's always that's the logical thing for them to do. I just don't know. He's kind of talked ever since he got hurt. He's been talking about we've heard a lot about his recovery's going really well. He's way far ahead of schedule, and he just seems like, I don't know, like he's a guy who plays games. You know what I mean? Like he's never been somebody who rests and sits.
But neither is SGA, right? So SGA had to do that for multiple years.
Yeah, but like
that's what you point out. You want to beat that team. They did.
I think it's different. I think it's different. I think SGA did not. He was not at the point in his career that Tatum is at right now. Like SGA did not have. He did not have all the accolades that Tatum already has on his resume right now. To go in and be like, no, I'm playing. Like, what do you do? Like, he didn't have that. I think Tatum, if he's healthy, he can be like, I don't give a shit what you want. Like, I am going to play because I am the franchise player. I've done everything you've ever asked of me as the franchise player. I play games all the time. I play through injuries. I've delivered a championship to the city. I'm playing. And I don't think that SGA has that or ever had that in Oklahoma City. I mean, maybe he has that now. Who knows with that when it comes to tanking. But I think that if Tatum wants to play, he'll play. Like if he's medically cleared to play and he's happy to do it, which I mean, I don't see why he wouldn't be. I think he's gonna play. Like, I really do. I'm almost banking on him. I'll do this. I'll bet you he plays this year. I bet he will play 15 games this year. I will bet that.
I think it's either 0 or 40. So I'm going to say it's 0. So,
okay.
I don't know. Do you want me to wear a Bills cap in the next pod or something? Or?
Yeah, you got to do the next pod. Well, it wouldn't be the next pod.
I'm not allowed to do any puns for an entire pod?
For like the rest of pods ever. That would be... that's what it'll do. We're gonna do it for your right to make puns for an entire offseason.
Nah, I can't. I'm not gonna be able to.
For an offseason.
All right, we'll call it a gentleman's bet there. I'll buy you a beer next time I see you.
Joke's on me because you're on the West Coast. Okay.
I still have the people who give me birth are still out there, so I have to go back and see them sometimes.
Oh, Howie Roseman is out here. Okay. Next one. The Brooklyn Nets, 19.5. I'm going under on this. I think a lot of Jordi Fernandez. I think he's a really good coach.
You know who else has said 19.5? I'm going under on this. Josh Giddey.
I could have given a lot of answers to that, and you probably picked the least controversial one. Yeah, I like Jordi Fernandez. I think he's a good coach. He gets his team to play hard, but I think they're doing the real tank this year. I think they're doing the real tank this year. Their owner has already kind of like hinted at it publicly, so I'm going under here. Not a lock, but I would feel pretty good about the under on this.
Do you think he hinted at it with a sigh of relief? You got to get him in now. It's a low number. So on the one hand, you might say there's a lot of incentive for teams to tank. So Brooklyn should really, really, really go hard. On the other hand, you're like, well, they're going to get some wins because the East isn't very good. I'm inclined to go with the under as well. There's no reason for them to try to be good. But they have some young players who, I mean, they have a lot of rookies and they're going to play them. What happens with Cam Thomas? We joke, but I mean, he is probably their best player. He's also on a qualifying offer. I would assume like he's going to leave. if they trade him, then they're really committing to that tank, right? I don't know what you get for him. I think you've talked about how it's surprising that nobody showed interest. Like, however much you think that archetype is overhyped, I mean, the Celtics just got Drew Holiday for Anthony Simons. So I'd imagine someone, and I imagine Cam is going to put up pretty insane numbers without tanking his efficiency. So I think some team will sell themselves into dumping some picks. We just saw Desmond Bane go for 4 picks. I don't think Cam Thomas is that, but he's a much better player than a guy like Jalen Green. I think that's a possibility, right? Like with Van Vliet out, does Houston make a move for a guy like Cam Thomas? I think Cam Thomas and KD on the same team would be hilarious, especially the team that used to be Daryl Morey ball, now having 2 of the most anti-analytics. Well, KD is his own thing, but he just hates analytics himself, and Cam Thomas is like the bane of many analytics folks. Although I think even they would admit he's reasonably efficient for his profile. I'm going to go under though because I think they will trade him. They'll play their rookies a lot, and it is a race to the bottom. So they're incentivized not just to be bad; they're incentivized to be really, really bad. And without Cam, they don't have a franchise cornerstone. They're looking for that, right? So I'm going to go with the under too. I'm taking the under on all these teams, so I wonder if I'm wrong. But
we're only 3 teams in, so you never know. You have the under as well. This is a good line. It's a good line. You're getting even action on both ends. I hate betting unders on these type of teams though, where it's like 20. It's so miserable sitting through a season where you're like, oh man, I really like. They have 16 wins. Like, really need to hope they don't get these last 4 in the last fucking 5 weeks of the season.
And there will be facing some teams that are resting starters, right? Or, doing that kind of thing. And there's injuries and their guys are going to play hard, right? They're playing for their future. So,
yeah. We'll see. I just think they fucked up last year. They know they fucked up last year. They need to get a high pick. So, yeah. All right. Next one, Charlotte. It is 26.5, and the over is at -115. The under is at -105. I'll let you go first.
I would take the over here. I'm higher, I think, on LaMelo Ball than you. They have. I like Brandon Miller. I think there's a chance he blows up or has a big jump. And the East sucks, so they have a chance at the play. They're going to have to decide. Do we want to tank, right? Or do we want to try to make a play and build some momentum? If you can make it, I think that this is probably a team that's struggling to sell tickets, right? A small market. So I think they're going to try, and I think they have the talent to go over
26.5. I also have the over here. I think LaMelo. The thing with LaMelo is when he plays, they're good. Like, I'm not saying they're amazing. I'm not calling him, a superstar. But when he plays, they're like a functional NBA team. They run decent offense. Like, it's really that simple to me. When he doesn't play, they're a tire fire. They can't score at all. Like, they can't run offense. They can't score. And their defense obviously isn't good. The front court situation is a little bit concerning, given that that they don't have really any established
Mark
center.
Williams, right? So
yeah, they traded Mark Williams. They have Yusuf Nurkic. It's just not a particularly.
They spent a high pick on Todd Brenner. So
they got Colin Sexton for nothing. I think Colin Sexton, this isn't, whatever you think about Colin Sexton, like when you're talking about an over, and when you're talking about an over under of 26.5, like he's the kind of guy that can bump you from like 25 wins to 30 wins or something. You know what I mean? We're not talking about trying to gain wins at the high end of the win scale. We're trying to, or the win curve, sorry. You're trying to get them at
Spencer Dinwiddie's probably washed, but he's also that kind of player. Like he plays hard.
Yeah, like
on a bad team.
they have a lot of these type of guys. I do like Knipple for a rookie. Like I think he's the type of rookie. Again, my baseline is that no rookies are likely to be good because that's usually the outlier. But he to me projects as the type of rookie who definitely
He has a very clear role that he can.
And he's not going to be destructive. He's just not going to be destructive to me. Like I don't think they're not going to be good at defense no matter who plays really. And I do think offensively though, like he makes sense, right? He kind of fits seamlessly in a role next to LaMelo Ball and Brandon Miller. And if you have a Colin Sexton on the floor, again, this sounds like it. Again, I love talking about teams like this because you say names and you're like, they can get this guy back, and you're like, that guy sucks, and it's like, yeah, but it's like, he might be the difference in them getting 25 wins and 27. Like Grant Williams will be back this year. Like he's an actual NBA player. You know what I mean? Like he could actually help them get up to like 30 wins. And do they have some tanking incentive? Yes. It's so hard for a team that's positioned in this way and has LaMelo Ball, like, because he's not, if he misses time, he'll miss time because he's actually hurt, right? He is not going to just sit. Like, I don't think that's going to happen. And
he's got too much balls for that.
Correct. And then you have Brandon Miller, who's entering his third season in the league. If you like Brandon Miller, then you should be projecting this season to be one where he really makes a serious step in his career. I don't have any thoughts on Kalkbrenner, but I know people that do draft stuff did really like him and thought he was kind of like, one of those, like a sleeper later in the draft. So he's an interesting prospect. I actually liked what I saw from Diabate last year. I liked him even coming out of college. Like I kind of always thought
he held Juwan's shitty defense together. So
yeah, and I just always felt like there was something there and that the defensive stuff would translate, and it has. And like, yes, he's undersized, and that's always going to be it's always going to mitigate what he can, his strengths to some degree, but he is an effective defender. He is somebody who competes really hard. He gives you a live body there anyway. They also brought in what is Abu Baji? I don't know anything about him. They still have like the Plumlee. They have Miles Bridges. This feels like an over to me. And maybe not by a lot, but I feel pretty confident about the over here. I mean,
how incentivized are they to make the plan, especially if LaMelo's there? He's like, hey, I've been here since 2020. I'm seeing other guys in my draft class have much more. I got drafted one pick behind Anthony Edwards. Clearly, I mean, maybe it was always crazy to think he had the same talent level, but that was a huge discussion. If I'm LaMelo Ball, I think I'm as good as that guy. You haven't put me in any kind of position to succeed. Really, the only guy you got me was Brandon Miller. So I think that they're incentivized to make the plan. They're incentivized to try to get Miller to show the next step. And I think the only thing is if LaMelo does get hurt, right, do they decide to tank? And I'm going to throw San Antonio out a bunch of times because that would be an intriguing fit for LaMelo. Now, on the one hand, San Antonio is a very serious organization, and to the extent you have concerns about, the driving stunts with LaMelo and the fact that he hasn't, I think he's underrated, but yeah, he does have tendencies that maybe you don't want on a vet. Like the model for what they might want from point guard is probably more Chris Paul, right? Even as a vet, he gave them someone who could help Wemby out. If LaMelo and Wemby could be an incredible combination, it could also stagnate them, right? But that's a team I look at. It's like, if Charlotte wants to tank, they could probably get pretty good value there. If I was San Antonio, I'd be willing to put a guy like Castle on the table, even, for example, or even Vassell could have some value to a team like Charlotte. So if they do decide to do that, then that probably puts the under more in play. But I'm with you. I think that they're going to be incentivized to go for the play-in. sell more tickets. This is a weak year for the East. They have a good shot at it. And this could be a team that gets you 35 wins, and that could get you the 8th seed,
Yeah, I mean, I'm not worried. I don't think they have a chance in hell of making the playoffs, even in the East. But they also
In the
might.
play-in.
I'd be pretty surprised. But like, maybe I'm wrong. I just think the front court is bad. It's really bad. And I can like Diabate as much as I want, but like that's the guy we're gassing up here. And by the way, like, how much does it suck that we just talked a bunch about a team that presumably is trying to rebuild through youth and all this stuff? Does anybody give a shit about T-John Salon? Does anybody think that he can contribute?
I mean, only to lampoon him. That looks like a Kevin Knox type pick right now. So
yeah. So I think they're headed in the right direction. Like, I think they understand where they are. They're just working from such a deficit from in terms of the starting point, So I don't see the play-in their future, but as we said, both.
But even if they're competitive for it, and like if they have a chance, you have guys like Miller and Ball. You don't want them to completely check out. Oklahoma City is a good example. Is they don't, right? They understand a long-term vision. But the reality is, if you're telling someone for years, just show up, lose, that's not always the best message you want to send. If they have a chance to play in, I think that would boost their wins a little bit too.
Yeah. Okay, the next team, the Chicago Bulls. Their over-under is 32.5. And I'll let you go here. I'll let you start this one. It's 32.5. The over is -115. The under is -105. Again, this is all on FanDuel.
Do they have their own pick?
Yeah, they have all their. They control their own. They control all their picks now.
Yeah, so there would be some incentive to tank. They have talent, though. I don't know what's going to happen with Kobe White, but he's a good player. So do they try to trade him if they feel like? I think him and Giddey. It's not obviously a good defensive backcourt at all, but there's some talent there, and they play off each other, I think, well on offense. I have no idea what's going to happen with Patrick Williams. I think that's an interesting. Like at this point, you can say he's been a little bit of a disappointment, to say the least. They still have Vooch, who I think is washed, but can still drop 20 on a given night. I don't like this roster much at all, but they have some players, and the East sucks. I think this is something I'm going to say a lot. They still have Disamu. They have. Giddey showed improvement there, and they're clearly invested in him. They traded Caruso. That was a high-profile trade. Kevin Huerter. So they have some players. I think the East is going to be bad, and I would take the over. And I think they will want to push for the play-in. This has just been a franchise that's been miserable for so long. I don't see that they will want to tank again. And then I'm not as big a fan, but a lot of draft Twitter, I know Chris Persianen likes him a lot. Not as zealous. Maybe he's a candidate for a breakout. He's 21. So there's a good amount of reason for optimism that they can make the play-in, and I think they will play that way. So even a guy like Okoro, a depth piece for them, sure, but he's played in the playoffs. Like he can knock down an open three, and he's a good defender. He can make an impact. So
can he knock down an open three? A lot of people are
a wide open three. I do remember every single one he made in that playoff series because it was like fuck.
Yeah, made like
or that time when Sohan made 3 threes on Christmas. But you always remember those. But I mean, he's a solid, like you said, right? He's a solid NBA player. They have a few of those guys. They have some young guys who might break out, and they're incentivized to make that happen rather than tank. So I'm going to go with
the over. I have the over here too. These are the records for the previous 4 seasons. 3 seasons. 22-23, 40 and 42. 23-24, 39 and 43. 24-25, 39 and 43.
That was with DeRozan and Levine, though, right? And a younger.
Last year they didn't have DeRozan and Levine, and they were fine. Like they were fine. This is what they are. They're never going to tank, but they're never serious enough to be more than really a play-in team.
Consistently mediocre.
Yeah, they're consistently mediocre. This is what they strive for. They're happy to get the play in. They're happy to get some extra revenue. If they make the first round, awesome. We're going to get at least 2 home games. Great for us. That's it. That's the sum of their ambition. And um, the beauty of that is it's very achievable in the Eastern Conference. It's very achievable in the Eastern Conference. And they have a good coach to achieve it. Like, this is not a knock on Billy Donovan. I think he generally has gotten the most out of the talent he's been given, which has been thoroughly mediocre and non-complimentary. And they made some interesting changes last year. They were playing at a super high pace. They were launching threes at a high rate, and ultimately, despite these changes, the outcome is the same. Like, this is their talent level. And yeah, like, maybe Bazelis is going to take a leap. There are people that really like their rookie, Asenge. We'll see what he can do for them. Josh Giddey is like, he's like the most we want to make the play-in level point guard ever. Vucevic is Vucevic. He's still effective, but we know what his limitations are. We know he's just good. We know what he does bad, and that's what they are. They're projected to have a shit ton in cap space next year, which is why, and like, they generally don't make in-season moves at all, ever. So I just think they're going to hold on to that cap space, and they're not going to make any moves anyway. So like, the
try
roster,
to get Giannis to come down I-75 or
restore the greatness to the great Bulls franchise. But yeah, I don't see this team doing anything. I really don't, and that works for the purposes of where are we projecting them, and I think they're firmly in the play-in mix. Trey Jones is still there, like, he's fine. Isaac Okoro is fine. Kevin Huerter is fine. Bazelis maybe can become very, very good. Ayo Dosunmu is fine. Javon Carter is fine. Kobe White is good. Vucevic is good. Like, this is what they are. They're a 38, 39 win team. And this is the thing. I think this number is super low. I don't get this number for them. Like, even if we're wrong, right? Let's say we're wrong, and we're just like, and they're not a play-in team. They can win 33 games and cover this. I think they're a 33-win roster. Like, I really do. Like, I don't know what are we.
Well,
what are
with
we
so many
do?
bad teams, the thing would be, if you're going to tank, go all out, right? Especially with the flat lottery odds and everything. So,
And they're not going to. They never do, because that would require Jerry Reinsdorf to not get the gate receipts he wants for a full year at least. So they're never going to do it. They're never going to do it. I'm taking the over a year. I think this number is actually ridiculous, and I would call this a lock. I'll say that. All right, next one is the Cavs, 56.5. That's the over. I'm going over on this. I don't understand this line.
what did they get? 64 last year, or
it was 64. I'll pull it up right now. Yeah, it was not. I mean, this was just not a particularly. I mean, they were good last year. Obviously, they were great last year. 64 and 18. I understand Garland is missing time to start the year. I know Struz is missing time to start the year. I think they can manage it. I do. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe, and it's also possible that last year, like, we got to remember,
they have
right?
the
They
best
were
player
the
in the
best
East too.
Right. Yes, they have the best player in the East, which is Jared Allen. No, but they had the best shooting percentage from three last year. So,
That could
maybe
be a
there's an
candidate for
element of
regression,
what.
though, right?
Right, exactly. And that's my point, is like, maybe that's kind of like where maybe there's stuff here that we're like, I guess the question is, was last year really their true level, right? Like, was that the true level of the team, or was it a year where you got really hot shooting from everybody on the roster, and that kind of exaggerates your true talent level? Because, and I don't know if you agree with me, but I feel pretty strongly about this. Like, I definitely feel the Thunder 67 and 15, or whatever the hell they went, that was a more accurate reflection, or it is close to the, if not the exact level of their true talent level as a team. Now, do I think that, like, SGA is doing the lion's share of work? Sure, but as a group, 67 and 15, to me, that feels replicable. I mean, I think we both picked them to cover their spread this year.
We
Which
have
is
young players who should improve too, right? So
yeah, and it's just when you watch them, you feel like, okay, yeah, you can understand how this team won 67 games, why they won a
68.
championship.
Sorry.
Yeah, and why they won a championship. When I watch the Cavs and when I think about this team, like they're obviously very good. Are they 64 wins good? I don't think so. But they don't need to be 64 wins good to win this. They need to be 57 wins good. And are they 57 wins good? I think they are. Like, you can project improvement for Mobley. They're going to get Garland back. The concern, obviously, is that there's no like definitive timeline yet, but they are going to get him back at some point. Whatever the concerns are about this front court pairing, with Mobley and Allen in the postseason, I think we at least can feel pretty good after last year that they have solutions to make it work in the regular season. DeAndre Hunter, who is Stacy, what is he? The best wing in the East, probably, by your estimation?
He's not far from Jaylen Brown, is what I said.
The greatest. What is he? Would you like? Is it
Is he prime Scotty?
Is he Jordan? Like, is he basically Michael Jordan? But like he's good. Like, he's a good player.
And he's their worst starter. I mean, with Garland healthy, that's really pretty good.
So I would say what this bet is actually coming down to, and it sounds so stupid when you say it, I think they've accounted for Garland's absence to start the year, right? I think that's baked in here. But I think what it really comes down to is, how do you feel about their backup guard spot? Because they got a lot out of Ty Jerome last year, a ton. And they obviously didn't go out and sign somebody to replace him. I think they brought in Tyrese Proctor in the draft. And like, that's kind of what they did. I don't have any strong take on that. But I do think that, like, this team to me is, sometimes you see a team and, we can allow what happened in the playoffs to cloud too much of, like, we know that there's a fundamental difference, right, between the playoffs and regular season. I just feel like in the regular season, I don't really have any doubts with the Cavs being able to rack up a lot of wins. And to me, 57 to cover this feels like, yeah, I'd take that bet. Even with the Garland stuff hanging over it.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, again, the East is not good. They project to be, at worst, the second best team in the East. I think it'll be a competitive fight for the top seed, which I think they will put resources into. I think who I'm saying is the second best team. It's obviously the Pistons. There's a lot of talent, right? When they're healthy, DeAndre Hunter is their worst starter. That's pretty stacked. That's a little bit like, yeah, Bridges maybe being the worst starter on the Knicks. Like, that's not a bad problem to have. That shows your I don't want to say depth, but the balance on your roster. So you have that. Donovan Mitchell is a great regular season player. I actually think he had a little bit of his production was a little bit lower last year. I expect a resurgence. I think to the extent Garland isn't going to be there, that might even juice that a little bit. Kenny Atkinson's a really good regular season coach. There is the possibility that Mobley takes another step, right? He improved last year. Is there more room there? And he's 24, 25 maybe. That's where you see people. That's what the Knicks have targeted in their free agency is to guys who are going to take that next leap. We saw that with Dante. We saw that with we saw that with Indiana and Obi, right? So there's a lot of reasons to expect them to even improve. Were they 64 wins good last year? Maybe not. But they're a really good regular season team for the reasons you mentioned, right? They're still going to launch threes. I do think backup guard is a concern, but that is the concerns that I have with Cleveland are more, can they beat the Knicks in a 7-game series? Can they beat, when Boston and Indiana are back, could they beat them I don't think they would have beat Boston in a 7-game series last year. Even the version of Boston we got. I don't think they can beat Oklahoma City, but those are like, can they win 56.5 games in a conference with one other great team, two pretty good teams in the three, I'll say Pistons, Magics, and Hawks, Magics, Pistons, Magic, and Hawks, and then a whole lot of crap that they're going to be playing. Their division, besides Detroit, sucks. So they're going to rack up wins. And I mean, Mitchell will most nights be the best player on the floor when they're playing against an Eastern Conference team. He's probably the third best player in the East. We'll see what happens with Embiid, but last year's Embiid, I would say that, yeah, Mitchell is better than him. So, they're going to have that. They'll get Garland back at some point. They're going to play defense, right? They have 2 7-footers who are strong defensive players. The shooting and spacing may not be quite what it was last year, but I don't think it's going to matter in the regular season. I think 60 would be a more interesting number, 59.5. I would project them to get 60. And I do think they'll be the top seed. Even though I think the Knicks are the better team in the playoffs.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think they're going to be the top seed, and that's fine. I'm not that worried. I mean, I don't think that's that important, to be honest. We've seen in the playoffs now for a few years that home court advantage doesn't really matter that much overall, I don't think. But anyway, that's not what this pod is about. But yeah, I agree. I'm with that. I think they'll cover that. Detroit is the next one. I thought this number was pretty surprising. Their over-under is 45.5. The over is -118, and the under is 45.5. Or sorry, the under is -104, I should say. I'll let you go here.
Yeah, that's a pretty easy over to me. I'm surprised at that number too. Look, I'm in the camp that Detroit is being overrated. I think they had a very competitive series against the Knicks, which, as I've never talked about, but in case anyone didn't know, I thought that was largely due to issues that were self-imposed on the Knicks by Tom Thibodeau and just the style that we played. Not starting Mitch didn't make any sense to me in that series. Forget about the Hart thing. That was just a series where when he played, he was dominating. And when he didn't play, Duren had quite a bit of success. So I think 45 in this Eastern Conference is very low for them. Cade improved quite a bit. How much more is there? I think that there will be more, and I think it'll show up in the playoffs probably more than the regular season because he was really good in the regular season. I've probably gotten a rep as a bit of a Jalen Duren hater, but he took steps and he's still only 21 and he's a physical freak. Do they expand what he can do on ball? Do you see some of the defensive shortcomings, which he has made huge strides in? I wouldn't discount that. Do you see him continue to improve there? I would bet on that. They lost quite a bit, right? So did they end up trading? Schroeder went to Sacramento, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so they lost Schroeder, who I thought was actually the second best player in the playoff series against the Knicks. They lost Tim Hardaway Jr. But, I don't think those guys, they're going to get the Isaiah Stewart back. They play hard. They have a very clear identity. They have a star number one option. They play tough defense. Shooting is probably going to take a step back, but I don't think it's 45 to me is pretty wild. I think they're going to be pushing for that 3 seed.
I'm just going to take the under here, and I don't feel good about it, but my logic is this.
I did compare them a lot to the 2021 Knicks, where they overachieved the previous season, and there could be a regression. I did compare them to that team where they just played hard every night, so I kind of get that. But 45.
I might even change my mind on this by the start of the regular season. I don't love that Jalen Duren and Jaden Ivey are going to be pieces in the rotation. Neither has extended yet. So these are guys that are playing for contracts. I think that can be a good thing, but I also think that can be a bad thing if you're playing for your stats to justify the contract you want at the expense of the team. And Jaden Ivey, would the Pistons have been as good last year if he had stayed healthy? It's very possible. Maybe they're even better. It's possible that that's the case. But it's hard to shake the feeling that they did benefit in some ways from not having to worry about how do we balance Cade and Ivy? How do we, play? How can they play off of each other? How do we make this work? It simplified things, and it made it easier. And I think they benefited from that because guys like Tim Hardaway Jr., Malik Beasley, they can slot in next to Cade in a way that's very, very simple. There's not a lot of how do we blend these two players together, right? It's very simple. They still did add Schroeder. He helped. Obviously, we saw a lot of Schroeder with Cade. I think it's notable that Cade himself didn't necessarily play that great. He didn't benefit that much individually playing off of Schroeder. That's interesting to me. And I think that same dynamic is and has been the case with Cade and Ivy. And that's an interesting dynamic. I think that's something that you need to keep an eye on. They lost a lot of three-point shooting. Like, say whatever you want about Tim Hardaway Jr. and Malik Beasley. These are guys that made a shit ton of threes last year. They did sign Duncan Robinson. He's obviously a quality shooter too. I think he's a little bit of a different shooter. I don't personally feel he has the same type of kind of consistent nuclear potential that a guy like Malik Beasley has. He's definitely a better shooter than Tim Hardaway Jr. though. But yeah, I like Duncan Robinson fine for what he is. But he replaces what? Like half of those threes? There's still a lot of threes there that need to be made. Isaiah Stewart's good. Is Isaiah Stewart a 4 or a 5? And if he's a 5, then, how many minutes is he really looking at if Jalen Duren is a preferred starter? Tobias Harris is in a contract year. What does that look like? And he had a great year for them. Don't forget, Tobias Harris had a great year for them. This was a year after looking washed in Philly. And now some of that might have just been, maybe it was not fun playing next to Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey for him and whatever.
We saw that with Horford too, right? Horford played a lot better not in Philly.
Right. So maybe there's just something there to that. But, maybe he also just had a year that was really good, but isn't going to be one that he replicates. And then there's stuff like, they got guys like Asar and Ron Holland. And I like Asar a lot. Hell of a defensive player. Not good enough to not get the series winner dropped on his head, but still very good. Defensive player. I think there's stuff to be really encouraged by in the offensive end in terms of his ability as a cutter. Some of his ball handling has improved, even though it's still not really, we're not talking about point guard handles or anything close to that yet. The vision is good. He needs kind of advantages to be created for him so that he can leverage his passing. But he's definitely like a high level passer. We know the athleticism. We know what he can do in transition. The shooting is terrible. Like there's really no two ways about it. He's a terrible shooter. Ron Holland, I think he shot the ball really well in Summer League. I don't personally buy Ron Holland as a shooter just because of what he did in Summer League. I don't know what the hell he's shooting in preseason. And I'll be honest with you, if he was shooting 75% from three in preseason, it wouldn't matter to me because I'm not going to believe it until I see it over a sustained period of time in games that actually matter. And it's a lot of young guys that are still establishing themselves, trying to figure out their games and trying to blend that into a team concept. It's a lot. It's a lot. And, losing some of those vets who, obviously a guy like Malik Beasley at this stage of his career, Tim Hardaway Jr. at this stage of his career, they're known quantities, right? Or even Schroeder, right? These are known quantities. They know what they are as players. They slot in and they do their role and they play to their roles. When you replace them with young guys who, and these are, we're talking about Asar Thompson was a fifth overall pick. I believe Ron Holland was fifth or sixth. Jalen Duren was a lotto guy. Cade Cunningham obviously was the number one pick overall. You've got to remember that, they're all playing for something in a way. And it's I don't know. Again, it's just, maybe I'm just being too concerned about it, but I do think there's real under potential here. And what I will say is a fundamental difference probably between this team and that 21-22 Knicks team is they probably, if they do hit their under, I don't know, they're probably still going to do it playing a lot of their young guys. You know what I mean? That's what made the 21-22 Knicks so fucking annoying is you're like, could we at least like just play our younger guys more, and then we could just then we can kind of be okay with whatever the results are. I don't think that will be the case with Detroit purely because the roster makeup is as such. By the way, even in the Duncan Robinson trade, they lost a guy like Fontecchio, who obviously he wasn't in the playoff rotation, which I personally thought was a little weird. But like he was a guy that played some minutes in the regular season and was fine. And yeah, the Isaiah Stewart thing is interesting. Like, where is he really playing full time? Because there are a lot of people that think that Asar's best position full time, or at least down the road, is at the 4. So is that something that they dedicate time to? So there's a lot for them to figure out for a team that made the playoffs last year, and I do think has a bright future. There's a lot to figure out, and there's a lot of stuff that I think has underrated. I don't want to say disaster potential because they could win 45 games, make the playoffs. I don't know if I'd call that a disaster, but maybe slight blip potential. Let's put it that way. They have a high. I think they have a high slight blip potential. So I'll take the under on them.
Yeah, I mean, I think to your point also with Duncan Robinson, for all the like Tim Hardaway and Beasley were not stalwart defenders, but they were not liabilities on that end, right? Duncan Robinson is a defensive minus. I still think with a lot of your concerns, I think Ivy being in a contract year is a good thing. I think Bickerstaff is particularly good at these kind of things, like balancing different egos. We saw it in Cleveland with Garland and Mitchell, making sure everyone gets theirs. I think with the young guys figuring their game out, that gives them a lot of upside. Like Duren has improved every year. Ivy has improved, right? I think as a rookie, he looked a lot worse than we expected. He's quietly has, I think, become better, even if you would say he's not a plus player yet. I think, there are also probably things that they can do with Stewart and Duren. We've seen the Rockets have success playing two bigs with another long wing related to their wing, right? Twin brother, right? So I just think there's a lot more reasons for optimism, and the East sucks. So
yeah, yep. All right, Indiana's next one. This number is 36.5. The over is at -104. The under is at -118. What do you think?
I think there's some incentive for them to tank. They traded. It's not just Halliburton. They traded Miles Turner. They have a lot of bigs, but they don't have anyone. They're going to be a defensive nightmare, I think, for themselves. I should say, not for other teams. They have some good young players, but I mean, the front court is looking pretty rough. They have is McConnell going to start? Yeah, I mean, I think that it's tough for me to write off Indiana because they should be competitive for a play-in spot. They obviously have eliminated the Knicks 2 years in a row, but I'm going to take the under. I think that they will want to tank. I think, especially after losing Turner, you probably want to now target another piece to play next to Halliburton. Maybe Mathurin takes a leap, and that eliminates the need for that, right? Or maybe Rick Carlisle is just player independent, and what they're doing in Indiana is just going to work. They're going to spam threes and be a pain in the ass to play against and run constantly. But I'm going to go with the under.
I also have the under on this. Didn't feel great taking it because I think Carlisle is an awesome coach. But Halliburton's out for the year in almost all likelihood. We have not gotten the same bullish reporting on Halliburton as we have on Jason Tatum. I like Andrew Nembhard. I think there are real limitations if Andrew Nembhard is a full-time point guard, which he's going to be. TJ McConnell is missing the start of the year. That seems problematic because he's probably the best backup point guard in the league. And now you're down your two of your three best ball handlers, if not your two best ball handlers on the roster. Benedict Mathurin is a bucket. Benedict Mathurin is also a black hole. He also doesn't defend very well. There's potential here for a guy like Jarris Walker to take a step up. where are his minutes coming from? And if they're coming in lineups where either he or Pascal or Obi is at the 5, I'm not sure how much that helps their team out, even if that's probably good just in terms of finding a way to get Jarris minutes on the floor. Again, you lose Miles Turner for nothing, quite literally nothing. And sure, like Jay Huff is a good value signing, but good value signing and good starting center, those are two very different things. That's a very big problem. I think it's one that probably is getting underrated because of Miles's kind of own weird ups and downs as a player, but they're real. This team they have talent at the guard position, even without Halliburton and McConnell. They have the talent on the wings in terms of Neesmith, Mathurin. Even a guy like Ben Shepherd can play a bit. Pascal Siakam is awesome. He's great. I mean, I think that you can argue that he is a top 10 player in the league, potentially. He certainly played like it at times last year throughout their playoff run. At the least, he's a top 20 guy. He's really good. Is that enough, though? I don't know. It doesn't feel like that's enough to get to 37. Their spacing has taken a hit and their ball handling has taken a hit. Even when TJ McConnell comes back, we know that he's kind of capped at 20, 22 minutes a night. It's just a lot. Like they've lost a lot of ball handling when you think about it that way. And even with progression from certain guys, I'm not sure that it gets them to where they want. So I'll take the under. The East sucks, but the waves of depth that they kind of rode to their successes last year and even the year before, those have been hurt. They get hurt when you lose guys like Halliburton and Turner who are at the front, kind of the forefront.
Suddenly TJ McConnell goes from being the best backup point guard, maybe, or one of them, to probably a subpar starter, right? Or not a 30-minute game starter, right? So,
yeah, 100%. And also, like, to the same point you made about the Celtics, like maybe the Pacers have incentive to tank too. Like if they get off to a bad start, they control their pick. What's to stop them from being like, yeah, you know what? This might not be a bad gap year for us to take. So I'll take the under here as well. All right, next one, Miami. Again, I gotta say the East. I think the East has a lot more difficult lines to pick than the West because it's just so weird right now. Miami. 38.5. The over is -105. The under -115. I will take the over on Miami. They're Miami. They don't tank. Eric Spoelstra finds a way to cobble together, 41 wins seemingly on command. They got Norm Powell, which sounds ridiculous to say, but like they got Norm Powell basically for nothing, which is a nice addition. Tyler Hero being out to start the year might hurt for a bit, but he'll be back soon enough. They're boring, man. What a boring team. They did get some Mane Fontecchio in that Duncan Robinson trade. That feels like the perfect. That doesn't that feel like the exact thing where it's like, oh, Duncan Robinson goes on to be fucking horrible this year, and Mane Fontecchio has a nice year. Like that would be the most heat kind of transaction for them to make. But yeah, this roster it's not inspiring. But can Spo get 41, 40 wins out of this roster? Yeah, I think he can. It's worth mentioning they went 37-45 last year. So they went under this number last year. I just think without the Butler shit hanging over them and whatever their issues are, I don't think internal drama will be one, and that will be a nice change of pace for them. I imagine that may help a lot of guys settle in a way that last year was more difficult. You talk about a guy like, Jaime.
They have a player named Steve Settle III, by the way.
Do they really?
Steve Settle. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead though.
They have a guy like Jaime Jaquez who had a very disappointing second year. Can he bounce back in his third year? Maybe. There are people that are really high on Nikola Jovic. I have not watched him enough to feel any strong way about him. I do like the little I have seen of him. Maybe he can take a step. Khalil Ware was kind of disappointing last year as a rookie. He's had some really nice spots here in the preseason. Can he carry that over into the regular season? These
Very
are the
talented player.
Yeah, these are the kind of upside plays they have going for them. They did well to get Davion Mitchell last year from the Raptors, and he was pretty decent for them. He's back. So yeah, I don't know.
Wiggins too. I mean, Wiggins is a good player still, right? So
yeah, Wiggins is a good player. Like I don't feel like again, this is not a contender. I don't think they're gonna get a top 4 seed or something like that, but I think they're in the play-in mix, and with Spo in a conference that is kind of this shallow in terms of the talent, the talent pool, he can make a big difference. So I'll take the over on the Heat.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Even without Hero, we know that Spoelstra can make it work. I think Davion was there. I think they're going to be a good defensive team. Obviously, still have Bam. They got Precious to the extent that matters. I would expect Hawkins to bounce back. I don't think he's ever going to be a great shooter, but he gives you some Josh Hart type things. Kasparas Yakuchonis, I don't know if I'm saying his name right, but he was their first round pick. He's played well in preseason. Not a big time scorer, but he can shoot and he can pass and he has good range. I think he's the kind of guy that you'd expect Spoelstra to maximize. There's the possibility of a Jovic leap, 6'10", but with some guard skills, intriguing player. And Khalil Ware is very talented. So they have some upside. They're going to try to develop those guys in a team that's going to want to tank. And then they have some vets, right? They still have Rozier, who was not good last year, but they have Rozier, they have Wiggins, they still have Bam, and Bam is alone going to win you some games on some nights. So I think I would go with the over here. And I do think I think the top 5 is reasonably clear cut for me, between the Knicks and Cavs and then Atlanta, Detroit, and Orlando. I don't think they'll be threatening those teams too closely. But I think they're probably the 6th best team in the East. Does that get you, or depending on what you expect from Milwaukee? So they'll be in that play-in mix. And I think, for the reasons you mentioned with Spo, Bam is still really good. They should be there. So
Cool. Okay, Milwaukee. The number here is 42.5. What do you got?
I'm going to go. What did they go last year? I'm going to look up what they went last year.
I can tell you in 1 second here.
49. They had 49 last year. I'm going to take this over. I think Miles Turner is a good addition. He gives you a lot of. I don't think he's quite as good a shooter as Brook Lopez, but he's turned into a pretty good shooter. I wouldn't call him a fake shooter anymore. Gives you some rim protection, which takes a load off Giannis a little bit. You have an upgrade on the spot that was really key to Giannis' success, right? I mean, Brook Lopez was really good, and he's 36 or whatever now. And it's Giannis, right? If he plays, he's still going to. They're clearly going to try to win this year. There's no incentive to tank because of all of the noise around Giannis potentially wanting out. They need to. They made the Turner move to show him that we can do this. Even at the expense of stretching Dame. So I think 42.5. I'll take the over there.
I'm going to take the over as well. I just don't see a Giannis team like
being bad.
Dame played 58 games last year, and they won 49. So it's not like he played 82, right? They had plenty of games without Giannis, or with Giannis and no Dame, and they were okay in those. So that is kind of
national or NBA champion Kyle Kuzma.
Yes, that is certainly a huge help for them. They were 16-8 last year without Dame. So, look, can you translate that over 82 games? Probably not. Was there maybe some just schedule kind of help? Sure, why not? But they were fine. Like they actually had a pretty good record without Dame last season. And I don't know that the supporting cast, right? If you think about their roster last year, take out Dame, how did it look? Is their cast this year, which obviously doesn't have Giannis, or sorry, without Dame, isn't it better? Like I think it's better. Like they have
When you get Turner,
Miles.
I
I think
like Cole
Turner.
Anthony. I don't think you do as much, but I think he's a solid point guard option for them.
Well, he's better
And
than not Cole Anthony. Like he's better than like what they had last year when Dame wasn't available. Miles Turner is better in 2025 than Brook Lopez. And
I
then
hope
most of the other
substantial.
supporting cast, yeah, like they got back Gary Trent Jr. They still have AJ Green, who's a hell of a shooter.
Amir Coffey, sneaky, solid signing, I think.
Yeah, I just think this team is fine. Like, Kevin Porter Jr. is there. He's not a player I particularly love, but he's the type of player that I do think like Doc Rivers can weirdly get a lot out of. Like he's just kind of done well with point guards like that. I don't know. Like it, I think people are really down on the Bucks, which obviously makes sense, for like concerns that are valid as far as their ability to contend for championships. But I don't think that applies to like, can they win 43 games? I think they can win 43 games. Yeah. I would take the over on this. Also, like Giannis should be really motivated this year. Like he kind of has an opportunity. He's talked about how much he likes kind of being the point guard effectively now, right? Like he's talked about that a lot publicly. And he has that opportunity now for the full season. And I think that, there's a chance that like, I think he's an underrated MVP candidate, which sounds bizarre to say considering he's won MVP twice. But
he has lower odds than Wemby, which was really surprising to me.
Yeah, like
Wemby is of the big men. He has higher odds. Yeah,
I just think the story is like it's a good story for him. I don't think the Bucks are going to win 50 games because you kind of need to win like 50 games to win MVP, unless you're Russell Westbrook and Kevin Durant left your team. But like, I don't think they win 50 games, but there's an outside chance of it. And if Giannis can have a year, it's a good MVP narrative. I'll say that much. It would be a good MVP narrative, and that's half the battle. So I'm also over on this. Okay, next one. This is the one everybody's waiting for. The Knicks 53.5 is a number that is minus 110 on both the under and the over. As we discussed earlier, now that the Knicks don't have Malcolm Brogdon, who me and Stacy both thought was completely washed and was terrible and should have been cut, he's retired now. No, I gotta be honest with you. I'm not that worried about like what this team can do come playoff time. I'm not worried about, them falling off a cliff because Tibbs knew some very deep, like he somehow figured out the absolute best way to deploy them, even though he never tried anything else. Like I don't believe any of that. But like we've seen Mike Brown, he's going to experiment a lot. I think that's fair to say.
Stuff. You said experiment a lot. That's experimenting, right?
Okay, moving on. I think he's going to experiment a lot with the lineups. We've seen him go to the 3-guard stuff quite a bit. I don't know how I feel about it, but he's definitely seems to be interested in finding out. I think he's still searching for what he wants that front court rotation to look like, which makes sense. We're only 4 preseason games in. And unlike Tibbs, he hasn't been here for years with these players. He's still figuring out probably all of them. He also hasn't had Josh Hart through preseason, so he's going to have to figure out how he slots in as we move forward. All that to say, I think that there is more stuff for him to figure out than we may feel as fans, because to us, because we've seen this team and so many players on this team for as long as we have, it feels kind of straightforward. I don't know that that's the case. I think there's stuff that he wants to figure out, and that stuff that he wants to see and give a chance to and let breathe. I would take the under on 53.5. I think that's a pretty big number. Like, again, the Knicks would have to match their best record in this millennium to to beat this number at 54-28. It's not a cakewalk. And they were very, very fortunate with injuries last year in terms of,
OG especially.
Yeah, like they OG did not get hurt. He did not have any major injuries. Cat didn't have any major injuries. Josh Hart was an Iron Man. He's already hurt right now, by the way. He's maybe not going to play the final preseason game of the either against Charlotte. So like maybe you get some regression on that. And yeah, like I just think between maybe some worse injury luck, maybe Mike Brown, it takes a little time to kind of figure out what he wants this rotation to look like, what works, what doesn't, all that type of stuff. I think the under is the smarter play here than the over.
Wow, Shwin is a Knicks hater.
Yep.
You just don't believe Brunson's a
and look, the other part of this is fucking real to me. Like I think this is real. These guys are still getting used to playing at the speed he wants, and it's not just about getting used to like just the speed of it, but also within the context of the speed is understanding what are good shots. Are the shots good, or can we get a better shot? Like I think you're already seeing some of that happening. Deuce actually had a play in the game against Washington preseason where he got a swing when he was on the wing. It's wide open, and he swung it to Matt Ryan in the corner, and then Ryan just swung it back to him because he's like, "I'm covered. You're open. Shoot the ball." I think they're working through some stuff, like in terms of maybe there's an emphasis right on finding the corner three or whatever, but what's a good shot versus a great shot. Brunson is, I'm confident that he can be better off if he adjusts to what Mike Brown wants in terms of playing off the ball more, but he hasn't done that in a while, right? At least not to the level that Brown is going to ask for. That's an adjustment for him. And these guys, they've shot really, really poorly from three in preseason as a team. That doesn't worry me as far as like, I believe guys like Brunson and Deuce and Mikal and OG and Cat, right? Like Shamit, whoever, like I think they're going to shoot the ball better over the course of the season. But again, when it comes to getting used to the new system and the speed at which you're trying to play and all that stuff, there's an adjustment period in terms of getting your legs under you and getting used to taking the shots. Like all threes aren't made equal. And certainly ones in transition, while they can be quality threes, they're different. Like running up and taking a three, almost like a full sprint, is a tough shot, even if you're wide open. And it's a different shot than they really got a lot of last season because they were never really hunting for that stuff. So, yeah, I think between just adjusting to the system and Mike Brown figuring out what his best combinations are and then some potential for injury regression, like the under just seems like a better play to me.
I want to do a really quick aside on this. So my conspiracy theory, I think earlier today, Chris Persianen released a report saying the Knicks are running into issues. They want to sign Brogdon, but they're running into roster constraints. They can't, and they're not able to make a trade. And then this report comes out a few hours later. Could it be that Leon invites Brogdon and it's like, all right, we can't guarantee you, man. It hasn't looked good in preseason. And then Brogdon retired because of that?
I mean, it's possible. From the way it sounds like it, though, it might just be that he was, like I said, like I thought he was not trying. It's very possible he was trying, and now is like, you know what? I just don't have it now. Like this is just not going to be easy, and that seems more likely to me than
It just seems very much a coincidence that Chris's report came out just a few hours before that.
But if the Knicks couldn't guarantee him, he could have been like, okay, that's fine. Then I'm just not going to sign here, and some team will pick me up.
Unless nobody else wants him, right?
But then you don't need to retire. You can just make up some bullshit excuse, be like, oh, something came up, and I'm going to step away from the team for the year or something like that, and still make sure that like, hey, doesn't mean I'm retired. It just means that I didn't sign with the Knicks. Like I think I don't really buy that.
Okay. As far as I am taking this over, even if it was 81.5, like any true Knicks fan should. But no, I mean, I'm going to take the over. I get a lot of your concerns. I also think that while they were lucky with injuries, Mitchell Robinson was a very impactful player.
Yeah, that's fair.
And like, I don't expect him to play 82 or even 65, but they're going to have him for a lot more games. We know what he can do in the playoffs and the regular season. I think we both talked about how much fruit was left, low-hanging fruit was left, just from starting that Hart lineup, just not doing that for how long they did. Just having a more of a diversity in lineup should help everyone, including Josh Hart whenever he's healthy. I think it's fair to be concerned. Does Brunson have to adapt to playing off ball? I think people forget Randall still played a lot of Randall ball that first season. And, a lot of people have talked about a lot, like once they traded Randall, with Cat not being that kind of playmaker and the offense just going back to Brunson, how much his catch and shoot, I think with Randall, he was getting a few attempts a game and he was shooting 47% of them. I don't expect that to be a big issue. I expect incremental improvement from Deuce. And I think Cat already had a really good season last year. He's now has a coach who worked with a big, who is a finesse big, who likes to play outside the paint. I think he's going to, if his scoring doesn't improve, I think, and he hit some pretty high marks, I think game to game it'll look better. I think injuries are a fair thing to bring up. OG is the biggest one I look at there. But I think Mikal Bridges in year 2 will be. We've heard Mike Brown talk about using him a little bit differently on defense and offense. I think with the contract situation taken care of, I expect that to be and being in year 2, I expect Bridges to improve. Look, if you're to point out the concerns of this team, not a whole lot of wing depth, right? Maybe Dadier now gets more of a real shot if Hart is hurt, and if without Brogdon being there, his roster spot is not directly threatened. Can he beat out a guy like Garrison Matthews? I imagine with Brown not being one or the other binary as much, they'll probably both get a shot. I assume that we'll get like a backup wing in aggregate. We can recreate a backup wing in the aggregate, so to speak, between the two of them. In the playoffs, that might not be enough, but that's an Eastern Conference Finals concern. A backup point guard, to the point you made earlier, Deuce is not the guy you'd want as a backup point guard. They're probably going to need some starter to babysit. All of the starters that are not Brunson have their own flaws. So without Brunson on the floor, yeah, there's going to be concerns. But I also think this team is just this starting lineup, whatever it ends up being, whether it's Mitch or Deuce, is just primed to blow up. We saw it early in the season last year. Cat and Brunson pick and rolls were extremely efficient. If you cannot just put a center on Hart, or if you have to defend that just with 3 other shooters, it's going to be really tough. If you have to defend that with Mitch in the dunker spot, that's also going to be really tough. I think that I think 60 wins is in play for this team, and so they get more games out of Mitch, probably, maybe a few less from Hart, OG, a few of these other guys. The East got worse, and they didn't have any huge roster losses. There's even the potential that someone like Dadier becomes a rotation player. There's, I think, a strong chance that Huck Porty becomes a much more reliable backup than Precious was. I like the over. Call me biased. I'm very in on this team, and I wouldn't be surprised if they completely explode and just go off.
I think I
And they
feel
have a
better
really good
about.
coach who's been for a long time. I mean, well, there is a really good coach. Let's leave that aside. This is a guy who's coached 1 seeds with top talent. Like he's won Coach of the Year. I think there's a lot of reason to be much more bullish.
I would be more bullish about this if I knew what Mike Brown was going to do. I think that there are mixed signals in terms of like, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean, he's starting double big. He's gone to 3 guard lineups almost like in every preseason game where they've kind of started the starters and then they cycle in the bench. He's used a 3 guard lineup as his first look off the bench almost, I think, all 3 times when that was available to him. What's his preference? Does he want to play small? Does he want to play big? He started big. He closed the first halves of the last 2 games. When Mitch was available, Mitch didn't close those halves. Deuce did in his place. Again, like this is not to say that it's bad to experiment with those things. So that's exactly what we wanted from Tibbs. It's more that I don't know right now what he settles on, what he likes, how he uses the pieces available to him, what are his tendencies as a coach, what are his strengths and weaknesses. And I just think without that knowledge, even though I do like the roster, it's harder for me to just be like, yep, over, no questions asked. Whereas you'll never get this, or you'll very rarely get this, but if there was some coach that I knew very clearly what their plan was with the team and how they're going to use pieces and whatnot, I'd probably take the over, but I don't. Or if you told me Mitchell Robinson's going to play 70 games, I'd be like, yeah, over, no question. But I don't think Mitchell Robinson's going to play 70 games. I think Mitchell Robinson's going to play like 56, 57, 58 games. That's a big deal. But I will also just like the final thing, like Brogdon retired. I stand by what I said with Clarkson. Like he just has not looked convincing to me. And does that mean then you're going to go to Tyler Kolek off the bench in his fifth at some point? Is Tyler Kolek going to now play minutes because you don't have Brogdon? There's just stuff that needs to be worked out. And because we don't, like if this was Tibbs, we would kind of have an idea of exactly what he's going to do. Whereas we don't know Mike Brown like that, or at least I don't know Mike Brown like that. So I'm apprehensive, and I would just, and I think the under makes sense. But I obviously would be thrilled about the Knicks hitting the over and think they definitely could hit the over.
Yeah, I see this as potentially a 60-win team. So I'm pretty bullish on
definitely
that.
possible.
I think there's a lot of easy. They were a much better team than they looked for most of the second half of that season. I think concerns about Mitch are fair. Like I said, I like Huck-Porty better than what they had last year.
Well, he's a big swing piece to me too. If he is as good as he's looked in the preseason, I think he changes.
And we liked him last year. This isn't like some anomaly.
Yeah, right? I mean, I have had he's in my username for over a year now. He is. I think he's the biggest swing piece for this team in a lot of ways, in the sense that if he is just so good that you're like, we have to find minutes for this guy, he changes how you set your rotations up, because now you got to set your rotations up to be playing double big more often. And then I wouldn't be nearly as concerned about the perimeter depth, because it naturally matters less, right? Your perimeter depth naturally matters less if Huck-Porty forces your hand and you're playing double big more. And I think that would play into the Knicks' hand significantly.
And I think
trickle down.
It's not a trickle down economics. Yeah.
Yes.
His
highly successful.
I think it matters too, right? Hartenstein was kind of a really good fit with Deuce, right? Because you could run a little bit of the offense. Huck-Porty has shown some of those things, right? Beyond the obviously his 55 and German kind of similarities, he's shown the ability to take 1 or 2 dribbles, to do dribble handoffs, to make like basic reads. That could help alleviate kind of the creation on the bench too. And Clarkson might just be its own thing, or his own thing. But if Huck-Porty can play, now you can say, all right, well, maybe I can use Cat to babysit the bench and have him play next to Huck-Porty, right? Instead of my thing with, if you make Cat the first sub and have him play with the bench, then you're asking Mitch to play a long stint. Maybe you can bring them both out, and then you put in Huck-Porty for Mitch, and you put in Hart or whoever for Cat, or Yabu for Cat, right? So Yabu gives you a little bit of creation too. So I'm against Oklahoma City. Yes, if you're asking Deuce to create with nobody else, or if you're asking Cat to create against Oklahoma City, that is a big concern. As far as winning 54 games, though, in a barren East, no, not for me. But to your point, I get the idea that there is a lot of uncertainty. There could be a figuring out growing pains phase, and it's not a low number. So,
yeah. All right, next team, the Orlando Magic, 50.5. What do you think?
Let's see what they won last year. They were not close to that, were they?
They were like 44 and 38, I think.
$47 and 35. Huh. So I was inclined to take the under because I do think they're being overrated a little bit. But you're talking about a 4-game difference where you added Desmond Bane and the rest of the East got worse. Even the best teams didn't really get better, right? I think the Knicks will be better. But Cleveland probably didn't get better. They probably got a little bit worse losing Ty Jerome. And then, Detroit arguably might have gotten worse, although they should improve with the youth. I'm when I say got worse, I think a lot of these teams will win more games, but against a team like the Magic, maybe be not as competitive as they were last year. Yeah, I'm going to take the over. I do like Desmond Bane a lot as a player. They have young guys who should improve, right? Paolo has improved. We know his warts. We've discussed them a lot, but still 21, 22-year-old guy, you can expect improvement. Franz, I think, especially with Paolo being healthier longer and Franz being healthy, he should improve. Yeah, I would take the over on this.
I have the under for Orlando. I don't really buy Desmond Bane as this like massive needle mover for them. I still think they have a lot of the same issues in terms of like I don't think their issues in half court creation were just about they don't have spacing. I think that's a cop out. I think it's bullshit. There are a lot of guys, a lot of teams that don't have great spacing, and their best players hit a higher level than, or at least drive their teams to a higher level than what Paolo can and has done. Wow. Just a very basic example would be like Trae Young, who has had not great spacing at various points in his career and consistently basically carries the Hawks to like a top 10, top 5, top 3 offense at times when he's been on the floor. And, I think Trae Young rightfully has skeptics and gets criticism. Paolo seems to get none of this stuff. I also think it's an issue that they don't seem to understand who their best fucking player is. It seems like nobody seems to understand who their best player is.
Wendell Carter Jr.?
Yes, Wendell Carter Jr. No, it's like everybody just talks about Paolo, and it's like, okay, well, I don't know. It's kind of weird to me that a bunch of fucking people who will use advanced metrics constantly and will point to them to make the case for, Nikola Jokic to an MVP or SGA to an MVP or this guy's on off, this guy sucks. And yet with Paolo Banchero, it's like, he's just so talented and big and you just see the potential and blah, blah. It's like, okay, but like he's not actually been that good. I don't know what else to say. Like he's been an inefficient shot creator who doesn't take good shots. Like he has a bad shot distribution, and he's not a good 3-point shooter. And he's not a good defender. So
Julius Randle?
Yeah. Julius Randle became, I think, an efficient overall offensive player when you account for the quality of 3-point shots that he is creating. Now, obviously, there are turnover issues, which we know with Randle constantly. I would also say Randle played with a lot more physicality and force than Paolo Banchero, like way more. And quite honestly, he's a way more physically gifted player. Like he is more strong. He is more athletic.
When locked in, he was a good defender too.
Yeah, and I think the speed that Randle can get when he starts rumbling is like Paolo cannot hit that. He doesn't have those physical tools or that kind of physical ability. He has other gifts. He's more fluid off the bounce, and he can create shots for himself in the mid-range off the bounce, I think, in a way that is more smooth and aesthetically pleasing than Randall. That's for sure. But yeah, like I don't know. I think that's an issue. I think the fundamental issue of like we are running our offense through the worst of two players is a problem. I think that's a problem. And Paolo and Franz, like Franz, a player who I think is better than Paolo, guess what? You can't shoot. If you can't shoot and your partner in crime can't shoot, that's a problem. Like, what team in the NBA in 2025 has a high level offense where their two top options, neither of them can shoot? If you can name me one, I'll be shocked. Like, this is a problem. And that problem is far more important than, oh, well, now we have Desmond Bane and everything is perfect. Like, okay, you have Desmond Bane.
It's worth noting also they'll get Suggs back. Jalen Suggs played only 35 games last year.
Okay, he's going to be back. Is he going to be? When is he going to be back? Because he's not been healthy yet. He's still not healthy. So when's he going to be back? I don't know. He's got this mystery fucking condition.
I would expect him to play more than 35 games this year.
I would have expected him to come back at the end of last year, and he didn't. All of a sudden, they were like, "Oh, he's out for the rest of the year." It's like, what? What happened? How did this happen? And he's still out. He's still out. You had all off season. What happened? That's weird. That's very mysterious. Yeah, I'm sorry. Like, I'm hearing Jace Richardson hype. Oh, we're hyping the 20. What is he? 20 fucking pick in the draft now is going to save this team because he shot, 39% from three or whatever, playing for fucking Larry Nassar University.
Well, that was a team with terrible. It was an Izzo team, terrible spacing. So he was the entire spacing.
Good for him. Good, he deserves it. And
a league with tough defense. So
yep,
I do like Jace.
With tough defense.
Is a rookie guard going to come in and make a huge impact? I think you're fair.
6'1" guard, drafted 25th overall. The odds of that player coming in and making a massive impact are minuscule.
We've seen it. We have seen a 6'1" guard pick 25 come in and make a massive impact as a rookie.
No, he didn't. He was 6'3". And even then, like, I'm sorry, like I don't think either of us should be like, oh well, fuck Emmanuel Quickly carried us to 41 and 31. Like, that's not how it works. It's just not how it works. Like, these players normally are not going to be the ones to save you. You know what's supposed to save you? Your franchise players. Neither of the guys can shoot. Neither of them is particularly, I don't think, a strong bet to be an elite offensive engine at various points in their career. I think Paolo has a chance to be an elite scorer if he can kind of leverage his size and strength better. But I don't think either of them projects as an elite offensive engine. So congrats on getting Desmond Bane. And they are better. They're an unequivocally better team this year. I don't like
when they won 47 last year, so that's why.
That's great. I think they're.
I'm not scared of them as a Knicks fan. But
I think there are advantages to injuries at times. Like, I think there are advantages to having less options. There are advantages to. There are advantages to it. There are advantages to it. We've seen it with the Knicks. We've seen it with other teams. Like, there are advantages at times to having less options, and I think part of the advantage they got is they basically had to play exclusively elite defenders. And I don't think that's the case now. Like, I don't think Desmond Bane is an elite defender. I actually think he could be a problem for them defensively. Not saying he's going to be like, a sieve, but he's not a particularly great defender. I think he's a guy that you can definitely attack. Mo Wagner is back. What condition's he in? But we also know with Mo Wagner, yes, he helps them offensively. He also hurts them defensively. I don't think that Wendell Carter Jr. is a particularly great defensive player. I don't think that.
Good.
I don't think Jonathan Isaac is the defensive player he used to be. And I think, like, we saw okay, your defense is great, fine. That works well at times in regular season. Does it actually work against the best teams? I don't know. I'm not really sold about that.
I just saw this report. Jonathan Isaac is retiring to join ICE.
Yeah, he probably doesn't need to retire to do that. They'll probably fund his salary. No, I just I don't know. I think this number is almost something about it is off because you would think the over is kind of an automatic thing. I feel like the book knows something with this team or is doubtful about something with this team, and I'm going to trust the book on this one, and I'm going with the under. That's me.
Isaac also trusts the book, so cool. That's what.
All right, we've been going for like 2 hours here. We should probably try and zip through these next few. The Philadelphia 76ers. All right, first of all, anybody betting this, you have a problem. Do not bet this. You have a problem. Don't bet this. The over-under is 42.5. It's minus 110 both ways. I mean, I will bet the under on this, and that's purely because like it feels like they constantly have bad injury luck, and so I will just trust the bad injury luck to be bad for them. And yeah, I will go with the under. I know Joel Embiid's practicing again and whatever, but I don't trust any of this stuff with that. With
Embiid is also 31 now. He's still obviously when he plays, but even last year when he played, career low, he had lowest numbers since I think his rookie season. Paul George is now I think 36 or 35. So not only even if he has better injury luck, that is a downward curve. Maxey is a great player. I think you also know what he is. I like McCain quite a bit, but you're not going to really play him much with Maxey. So I get the ups. Like Embiid returns to form. This is an easy hammer the over. That's a very difficult thing to guarantee at this point in his career. I don't know exactly what we're going to see from Paul George. So I'm taking the under too. But like you said, this is just such a high variance team that anything could happen really. So yeah, Embiid is now 31, so he's gonna be 32 by the end of the season.
If you want to bet this number, don't, and instead call the number. Call the number. All right. Next one is the Toronto Raptors. This is 39.5. This is plus 100 on the over, minus 122 on the under. You said over on Orlando and under on Philly, right?
Yeah.
Right now you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You have 8 overs and only 5 unders, just in case that matters to you. I have Toronto over on this. I don't like anything about how this team is constructed. I don't like how their pieces fit together. But I do think they have, like, to me, the best thing I can say about their team is that I feel like a lot of their players would be viewed much better and actually perform better on different rosters. Because together they don't make sense. They're like the opposite of Captain Planet. Like the opposite. Like with our powers not combined, we are Captain Planet. Yeah, if you take them away from each other, I think they make a lot more sense. Unfortunately, they're all the same team. But like, look, Scotty Barnes is funny to make fun of. He's at the very least, he's like a good starting player, right? Brandon Ingram, again, definitely has concerns as far as like, is he an elite shot creator? How far can you go? But like, that's a different concern than can we get to 40 wins with Brandon Ingram being a first or second option? We've seen him be able to do that. Jakob Poeltl, good starting center, declining defensively, but still good offensively, and probably one of the best screen setters in the league. Emmanuel Quickly, he's really struggled to get to the rim at points in his career. Rim pressure continues to be an issue for him in Toronto. He has to stay healthy, which has been an issue for him in Toronto after not being one in New York at all. The three-point shooting is great, but what else do you have? But like, we also know that he can fit well next to higher usage on ball guys, even as a point guard, because of his ability to play both on and off ball. I think that's pretty good. RJ Barrett. Okay. And I don't know, like Grady Dick is fine. And I think people really like Colin Murray Boyles. I would be lying.
You don't think people like Dick?
I do think people like Dick. I think that Colin Murray Boyles is a player people would like, but like, I don't know much about him, but he seems to have a lot of good plaudits for his defensive capabilities. I think that's an interesting player. Again, like the shooting sucks, the spacing sucks. We know all of that, but do they have enough here to kind of like 40 win it in the East? Like, yeah, I do. I think they do. I think they do. I don't feel great about it, but I do think that there's enough there to do it. Health is a big thing, though. They have not been able to stay on the court, all these guys together, right? between Barnes and Ingram and Quickly and Pirtle and whatever. Like they need them to stay on the floor so they can at least try and start piecing this stuff together. And it's not going to be easy because of the lack of complementary skills among their best players. But I don't need them to be good. I need them to be mediocre, and I do think they are mediocre. So I'll take the over here. I like the extra juice I'm getting too.
I'm going to take the under. Maybe you did bias me by bringing up my skew. I think you made an interesting point. I do think Quickly was really good for Randall. We saw it with Brunson too, but it's a little bit different. Where Randall is a guy who, when he has spacing, he does draw a lot of attention from the mid-range and low post, and has the passing chops to do that when he has the right spacing. Maybe he could have a similar impact on Brandon Ingram, as a player I'm not a huge fan of. But I still think the roster construction is rough. RJ Barrett is 25, and I've never seen him become a good defender. I think one of those guys, I think Scotty or Ingram by themselves, maybe next to a guy like Quickly, would be good. Together, I really, those three wings starting together really screams horrible spacing to me. And like Barnes is a good defender. He's not the kind of impact that maybe he takes a leap. I don't know. But you're talking about two subpar defenders, at least in Barrett and Ingram. They don't really have a great rim protector. To your point, Pirtle is diminishing defensively. I think Grady Dick is, like you said, good. I think we kind of know what he is at this point. He'll get better as a shooter, but I don't think there's going to be some creation leap or something there. I think this is a poorly constructed team. Quickly played very few games last year, and when he did play, I thought, I do think that he has improved. I think to the point you bring up about rim pressure, a big part of that is how shitty their spacing has been. If this is a guy who already struggles, now you're having him play with guys like RJ and Scotty, who teams can cheat off of. That doesn't seem great. And even last year, so his rim pressure hasn't really improved much since coming over from New York. It's stagnated. I do think he has the potential for more, but it's not a well-constructed roster. We'll see. I mean, there's a world in which Ingram is rejuvenated, takes on the creation load, and just meshes with Quickly so well. There's a world in which 25-year-old RJ Barrett takes a leap. He has played better in Toronto. He has, if you want to counter my Quickly point, yeah, RJ has had no problem getting to the rim, and putting up numbers. I think he's shot the ball better in Toronto too. So I get those arguments, but I still don't think this is a team that complements each other much. And I'm probably also lower on the overall talent level than you are. So I'm going to take the under.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really think we're that different on the talent level. I just think that they have enough good players that don't make sense together.
They have a lot of solid players that don't make sense together. If it was good players that made sense, like that's with Orlando for me. It's like, yeah, I get it. There's issues, but there's a lot of good players. These are like,
yeah, so it's like a 10-win difference. It makes sense.
We'll see. I'm going to take the under though.
Fuck you. All right, final one, the real barn burner here. This is the Wizards. The number is 20.5. I think Pelton had them as the lowest projection he's ever gotten or something when he's done this exercise. I don't remember what the hell the number is. It's obviously very low. I have the under on this. Don't feel great, but the under is at minus 105. Over is at minus 115. I'm not sure what their motivation is to win games this year. Like,
to give us
yeah, I guess that would be their motivation. But they already got fucked when they didn't, like, they won on the last day yesterday or last season, and I think it cost them like 2 or 3 spots in the draft, if I remember correctly. I just think when you have an experience like that, you're kind of like, okay, we're not fucking around this year. Will they have the worst record in the league? I don't know. I think they'll certainly give Utah a run for their money. But I imagine will want to guarantee themselves one of the bottom two records in the league, and they already have kind of gone about some initial steps, right, in terms of moving on from Marcus Smart. They traded Jordan Poole, who kind of got his shit together towards the end of last season, for CJ McCollum, who is an expiring contract. Chris Middleton is there. They actually probably won that trade, which they probably didn't want to in terms of on-court value because
But
Chris
he's probably
Middleton
not going to play that much anyway, right?
Yeah,
Is he expiring?
exactly. Yeah, Middleton's expiring, so he probably
The
won't play that
contract's
much.
expiring. I certainly hope
Yeah.
he isn't, but yeah.
Yes. The center position, we'll see what they do with that. Sarr, I'm kind of intrigued by him, but he's not actually good yet. But there's not a lot of established quality on this team. I like the potential of a lot of these guys. Bilal, I mentioned Sarr, obviously.
Champagne.
Yeah, you look at a guy I think their rookies actually look really nice. I think Trey Johnson looked pretty good. I thought Will Riley looked really good when they played us. But playing preseason and regular season are very different things, and I think they're about to learn that. And it's fine. They might as well. There's no reason for them to be running this, rushing this. A guy like Bub Carrington. I think there's real talent there, but he hasn't demonstrated the ability to kind of move the needle yet for this team positively. And I suspect that in the right scenarios, they are still looking to be sellers. I don't really buy that Corey Kispert's part of this team's future. I think that they would trade him if a team came in for him and offered something that they felt was worthwhile. So, even if they got off to a nice start, I think their measures would be taken to ensure that did not continue, and they might even try to cash in on some players. So, I'll take the under on this.
I'm looking up how much Kispert makes because he's always been an interesting. So 13, so it'd be tough to match that for the Knicks. He's always been an interesting piece to me. I do agree that he's 26 now, so it definitely makes sense for them to move him. I think Cam Whitmore is an interesting pickup for them. I think they're doing the right things to build as a franchise. I'm pretty high on Bub long term. I'm quite high on Sarr long term. Something like Ibaka seems like it could happen. That's now for the second overall pick. Maybe you'd say that's a little underwhelming, but I think he's a good player. You can see that he does things on defense that very few players can. Good coordination, still figuring out how to play the game. And get that consistency. But yeah, I mean, I don't think Middleton or McCollum are going to play much. Bub is still a developing point guard who's more of a combo guard, but he has the size. They're making him a point guard, but he's still getting used to that. I think he's a very good shot creator, good size and talent, and he can hit tough shots. But I don't think he's there yet. I like Bilal a lot. I don't see him becoming a creator. Whitmore is one who I could see Whitmore blowing up. This is a guy who's shown shot creation, physically very talented. He can shoot, he can score at all three levels. He can create his own shot, a bit of a black hole still. But that's the kind of guy you think could have a leap, right? But as much as I want them to beat this over and get their draft pick, I'd have to agree with you. I imagine if they can dump CJ to a team that needs a backup guard, right? I'm sure there will be teams that if he's healthy would still say if you're just going to come off the bench and play 5-10 minutes, maybe that's it, right? Maybe I'm throwing this out there, right? Maybe a team like Golden State, if they want to move off Draymond at some point this year, or or Kuminga or whoever, right? It won't be Kuminga, but that could be something that happens. So I would imagine that this is an under, and they're just looking to get the young guys minutes, see what they have, and make sure they get the highest possible pick next year in the draft.
Yeah, that's what I think too. All right, we're gonna end it there. Thank you everybody for listening. Thank you to our sponsor, FanDuel. Stacy, let the people know where they can find you and plug anything you'd like to plug.
You can find me at Stacy Patton 89. I'll plug all the great work at the Strickland. I'll specifically call out Strictly NFL. So if you're a Giants fan and you follow this, if you're a Giants fan, you know that you had a very exciting win. I was miserable during that game, but I won't take anything away from the Giants. And I think Constantine did an excellent job. And if I was a Giants fan, I would have loved. So go check out that recap. And just as the NFL season continues to intensify, I'll specifically plug Strictly NFL in addition to all the other great work at the Strickland.
Yeah, I will echo those sentiments. Definitely check it out. I have nothing to plug myself, so I'll just plug all the work at the Strickland as well. And that is our show for today. Thank you, everybody, for listening, and I will see you on Friday. Peace.